Imagine yourself standing at over 14,000 feet, the cold wind biting at your face. You're exhausted, lightheaded, and every breath feels thinner and more desperate than the last. Your legs feel like lead as you stumble over rocks, your vision blurring from dehydration and fatigue. To top it all, you're alone, separated from your hiking partner, with the vast, unforgiving mountains stretching endlessly around you. You check the trail ahead, but everything looks the same, and a creeping sense of dread seeps into your bones. Which way do you go? This is Fatal Tragedies, with the story of the disturbing death of the mystery hiker who vanished. Michelle Vanek found herself in this exact situation nearly 2 decades ago on Colorado's Mount of the Holy Cross. Her case left more questions than answers and sparked one of the largest searches in state history. But why did it take nearly 20 years for the first real clue to surface? And could what happened to Michelle have happened to any of us? Michelle was 35 years old, a devoted wife to her husband Ben and a mother to 4 children. On September 4th, 2005, she set out to conquer her first 34,000-foot mountain, the harsh and remote Mount of the Holy Cross. Accompanied by her longtime family friend and hiking partner named Eric, Michelle was determined to reach the summit. But as they neared it, they became separated and Michelle was never seen again. This sparked the largest search operation in Colorado state history, lasting 8 days and involving over 800 volunteers, scouring the area on foot and by air, and yet they found no sign of her. No footprints, no clothing, no hiking gear, no part of her backpack, not even a crumbled energy bar wrapper. The complete lack of clues only fueled wild theories and growing suspicion, leaving an unsettling mystery shrouded in speculation. So, what really happened? Michelle and Eric had been planning to climb a 14,000-foot mountain for over a year. Michelle, a dedicated marathon runner who exercised daily, had never tackled one of Colorado's towering peaks. Eric, however, had extensive experience, having summited 36 of the state's 54 14ers. The 14ers refer to a thrilling list of 58 mountain peaks in Colorado that soar above 14,000 feet. Many adventurous hikers set themselves the challenge of conquering all 58, marking each ascent as a personal achievement. But then, this comes with its own set of challenges. It's a test of both physical and mental endurance. One of the biggest hurdles is the altitude, which can affect people in surprising ways. You might start with swollen fingers or feel a bit winded, but symptoms can quickly escalate to severe nausea, dizziness, and even confusion. At such heights, what seems like minor discomfort can become a serious, potentially life-threatening situation. Navigating these peaks isn't a walk in the park either. Unlike a forest trail where trees and well-trodden paths guide you, once you climb above the tree line, the landscape changes. Smooth trails vanish, replaced by vast boulder fields where your only guide is a scattering of rock cairns. It's easy to lose your bearings in this rocky maze, and many hikers have found themselves shivering through an unplanned night under the stars. However, Michelle and Eric had a different plan, aiming to tackle their very first 14er, and after weighing their options, he suggested Mount of the Holy Cross, which rises to 14,007 feet. The Mount of the Holy Cross Trail kicks off at the end of Ticawan Road, leading adventurers to the summit of the iconic Mount of the Holy Cross within the breathtaking Holy Cross Wilderness. This hike is not for the faint of heart, featuring a challenging ascent with over 8,000 vertical feet of elevation gain and several miles of rocky terrain to navigate on both the way up and back down. With unpredictable weather, being well prepared is essential. Starting from the parking area, the trail offers a moderately steep climb to Half Moon Pass. Hikers will traverse through lush spruce fir forests for the first mile before breaking above the tree line to reach the pass. On the west side of the Moon Pass, the trail descends, featuring some steep sections that lead to East Cross Creek. From there, it's an uphill trek over rocky talus to conquer the peak of Mount of the Holy Cross. Strong navigation skills are a must for those aiming for the summit. Speaking of the summit, the mountain offers 2 main routes. The easier and more popular route is the Half Moon Trail, which follows the Northeast Ridge. The more grueling option is the Halo route, which begins on the Fall Creek Trail and eventually leads up the steep Notch Mountain Trail. This route passes a stone shelter at 13,224 feet before looping around the south side of the mountain, crossing three 13,000-foot peaks along the way. The Halo route is known for its extreme difficulty. It's a relentless climb full of elevation gains and losses, and even the most seasoned hikers end the day exhausted from the intense effort. Both trails to Mount of the Holy Cross begin at the Half Moon Campground. So early morning on the 24th of September 2005, around 6:30 a.m., Michelle and her hiking partner Eric arrived at the campground intent on starting their hiking. But the start of their adventure was marked by confusion. They had planned to take the simpler of the two trails up the mountain. While the specifics of their planning aren't entirely clear, all they knew was that the treacherous Halo route was far beyond their limits, a path to be avoided at all costs. With that in mind, they set off, ready for an adventure. But right from the start, things seemed off. Construction was in full swing at the trailhead, adding to their disorientation. They wandered around the parking lot, searching for a familiar landmark, only to see one path stretching out before them. Convinced it had to be the Half Moon Trail, the easy forgiving one, they began their journey, winding deeper and deeper into the heart of the Colorado wilderness. It wasn't until much later, as shadows lengthened and the terrain grew even more perilous, that they realized their dreadful mistake. The trail they were following was not the Half Moon. Somehow, they had strayed onto the very path they had sworn to avoid, the dangerous, unforgiving Halo route. And by the time the truth dawned on them, it was far too late to turn back. To make matters even worse, Michelle was already feeling the effects of the altitude. A dull headache, a common sign of altitude sickness, was beginning to set in. She took some Excedrin and pressed forward. The ascent was grueling, a series of switchbacks climbing the mountainside. Eventually, they arrived at the stone hut built in the 1930s. The wind, biting and frigid, whipped across the rocky terrain, forcing them to take shelter for 10 to 15 minutes to warm up. When the wind calmed, they pressed on, skirting a high ridge as they pushed toward the summit. Now the views opened up. To the north, they spotted hikers on the standard route, the one they had originally planned to take. But on that cold, rugged peak, they were on a far more challenging path. By that point, they'd been on the trail for over 4.5 hours, and Eric grew concerned. They were going to be much later getting home than expected. Michelle, battling exhaustion and possibly the onset of altitude sickness, had started lagging 30 to 60 feet behind. As they reached the final push toward the summit, no more than 400 yards from the top, Michelle finally hit a wall. She was completely drained, out of water, and clearly struggling. Eric offered to carry her pack, but she refused. He then suggested they turn back and head down the mountain. Despite her fatigue, Michelle was determined. She didn't want to disappoint Eric, especially when they were so close to their goal. So she insisted he continue without her, reassuring him that she would rest and wait there. Eric then pointed across a boulder field, instructing Michelle to make her way in that direction toward the trail leading down the mountain. He promised to be quick, summiting and then catching up with her. Michelle still had a couple of energy bars in her pack. Before leaving, he handed her a tube of vanilla bean-flavored energy gel and set off for the summit. He reached the top at 1:42 p.m., where he called somebody to let them know that he would be late. He explained how they'd accidentally taken the wrong trail. After snapping a photo for another couple at the summit, he turned back down, expecting to catch up with Michelle. But as he descended the northeast ridge, where he began to take hold, there was no sign of Michelle on the trail. Alarmed, Eric dropped his pack and retraced his steps, shouting her name into the empty wilderness. Hikers nearby heard his desperate calls, but no one had seen her. He questioned every person that he passed, yet no one had spotted her. With daylight fading and growing panic, he found a spot with cell phone service and dialed 911. By early evening, the first search teams were already heading into the rugged terrain to look for Michelle. For the next week, searchers braved the brutal conditions as nighttime temperatures fell into the low 20s and more than a foot of snow blanketed the rugged mountain. They combed the area tirelessly, hoping to find any trace of Michelle, something, anything, that might offer a glimmer of hope that she was still alive. Despite their relentless efforts, even a massive final push involving 336 volunteers turned up nothing. Not a single clue emerged to shed light on what had happened to Michelle. Finally, with no signs of progress and worsening weather, Eagle County Sheriff Joe Hoy made the difficult decision to call off the search. The search for Michelle had been the largest in Colorado history, spanning 8 days and involving hundreds of searchers. But despite the scale of the operation, no definitive clues ever surfaced. For the next 18 years, speculation swirled, and her case stood out, shrouded in mystery and suspicion. The simplest theory is that Michelle became lost and succumbed to the mountain's harsh conditions. With no experience hiking at high altitudes, she was already exhausted, out of water, and suffering from what could have been altitude sickness. She also had very little food left and no overnight gear. All these factors point to a likely outcome. After separating from her hiking partner, she may have made a wrong turn, potentially falling or succumbing to hypothermia. Searchers focused on the Cross Creek drainage area, suspecting that she veered west while trying to reach the Half Moon Trail. But despite concentrated efforts there, she was never found. How could a massive search operation come up empty-handed? Then this is where the theory of foul play comes in. During the search, some unsettling incidents occurred. On the second day, near the Cross Creek trailhead, searchers encountered a man who behaved suspiciously, hiding behind a tree and eventually running away. Blood was later discovered in the snow nearby, and a duffel bag containing a shotgun was found. The next day, searchers stumbled upon a tent occupied by somebody who refused to communicate. When authorities eventually spoke with him, he gave the name Peter Martin but offered no ID or further explanation. Then there's the suspicion surrounding Michelle's hiking partner, Eric. Authorities considered the possibility that he might not have been truthful about what happened. He was extensively questioned, and as scrutiny intensified, Eric chose to stop cooperating, hired an attorney, and refused to answer more questions. His experience in climbing 14ers raised eyebrows. Why would he take a less experienced hiker like Michelle up such a difficult peak without overnight or survival gear? Michelle's husband, Ben, was also questioned. He knew Eric well and insisted there was no romantic involvement between he and Michelle. Ben defended Eric, saying Eric doesn't have a malicious bone in his body. But still, the unsettling questions linger, leaving Michelle's disappearance a cold case clouded in speculation and eerie coincidences. For years, there were no significant breakthroughs in the search for answers to Michelle's mysterious disappearance. In 2009, a climber discovered a bone on some rocks near the Halo Route. Hopes were briefly raised, but it turned out to be nothing more than a deer's jawbone. The trail went cold again. Then in 2016, investigators asked Michelle's husband, Ben, to provide her dental records to add to the national database for missing persons. And still, there were no developments. In 2019, Ben and the couple's 4 children submitted DNA samples, ensuring that if Michelle's remains were ever found, she could be positively identified. Yet despite the ongoing hope, the case remained a haunting mystery. Then, in late August of 2022, something finally emerged. A man and his son, while bushwhacking through the rugged wilderness north of Mount of the Holy Cross's summit, ventured below a rocky slope known as Angelica Colere. There, they stumbled upon something significant. A boot, weathered by the years but unmistakably out of place in the wild, remote terrain. It's unsure if the father and son who stumbled upon the boot knew about Michelle's case, but something about the scene seemed important enough for them to take photos and alert the authorities. It took search teams 2 attempts to locate the boot, but when they finally did, they retrieved it for forensic analysis. Soon after, tests confirmed that the boot did indeed belong to Michelle, marking the first concrete clue in her disappearance almost 20 years after she went missing. Since this discovery, search efforts in the surrounding area have resumed, with hope to uncover more evidence. So far, nothing has come to light, meaning the case remains unsolved. However, finding the boot is a significant breakthrough and suggests that her death might have been a tragic accident rather than the result of some form of foul play. Here's why. All the suspicious activity reported by searchers, the man hiding behind a tree, the duffel bag with the shotgun, and the mysterious tent, occurred much lower on the mountain, far from where the boot was found. Additionally, the region where the boot was discovered hadn't been heavily searched right after Michelle went missing, and it's a remote spot that few people ever hike.
This remoteness likely explains why it took so long to find any sign of her. Scott Beebe, president of the Vail Mountain Rescue Group, believes that Michelle tried to follow her hiking partner Eric's directions and made her way back to the Half Moon Trail. She may have initially gone north as instructed, but then veered slightly to the east, unintentionally heading down into the Angelica Coulee. Beebe speculates that she missed reuniting with Eric by as little as 10 minutes, a heartbreaking thought. Once she failed to reconnect, she likely couldn't find her way back, and the mountain's harsh conditions proved fatal. The area wasn't searched until the final day of efforts, and by then, snow had already covered the ground, hiding any evidence or traces of her passage. Though the case isn't fully solved and further clues may emerge, the evidence currently points towards an accident, likely due to altitude sickness and a combination of disorientation and being lost, rather than any form of foul play. And now, as we piece together the clues of Michelle's tragic story, one question remains. How far would you go to conquer your fears on a mountain? And what would you do if everything suddenly went wrong? Make sure you share your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you found this video captivating, then feel free to like and subscribe to the channel for more intriguing videos. And we'll see you in the next one.